IVM.
Hello and welcome to episode 98 of the Sledges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. This is DJ, your host for this week, and I'm joined by a very special guest. It's Adam from the Cricketeers podcast. Now, regular listeners of our podcast would obviously know Adam. He's been on the show before. We've done crossovers with them when India had been to New Zealand last year. He was part of the absolutely amazing Mega Pod where we put together the world's biggest cricket podcast. So, Adam, welcome back to the Sledges and Sledges Cricket Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me on your podcast. And I just heard 98 podcasts down, so only two more, and you've got that century. Must be getting excited.
Yeah, we're getting nervous. It's the nervous 90s. We're pretty excited to get there if we do. So, not counting our chickens before they hatch.
It feels like New Zealand and India are always playing, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, we spoke offline, and it was this time last year that we spoke for the very first time. Then we spoke during the World Cup, during the preview games as well. So, maybe we could have an annual trip down under followed by a trip to New Zealand.
I think so. I think the country should work on an agreement where each other tour each other's countries because, it's becoming an actually fantastic little rivalry we've got going with India at the moment. We haven't been over to your shores for a little while either. I think a couple of years ago, from memory.
That's probably right, and it's one of the nicer rivalries we've got, isn't it? I mean, there's a little bit of needle with Australia. There's always a little bit of needle with England. So adding New Zealand to the Big Four, and there are plans of having a tournament with 4 teams only, yet to be confirmed who the 4th team will be. I think that would be quite a nice addition to the world cricket scene.
I was about to say I do as well. I read that report that Sourav Ganguly was in London, was it a week or so ago, and they were discussing a 4-team tournament, one-day tournament, to be held over in England. So, yeah, it'd be a great little tournament to be part of. And as we kind of mentioned, New Zealand versus India's rivalry has really grown over the last couple of years. I mean, there was a couple of close ODI series held in India a few years back. I remember, was it 2-1? New Zealand had a really good opportunity to win that ODI series, but Tom Latham from memory and de Gromholm couldn't quite get us over the line. And then obviously you guys belted us last year 4-1. Then there was the World Cup semi-final and then the 3-1 days that have just recently been played. So it's been some fantastic cricket over the last few years.
Absolutely, and you've been getting the better of us in the ODI sphere. So let's talk a little bit about that, Adam. I mean, it's a little bit of a strange tour for us as Indian fans because India obviously won the T20 series 5-0, where it could have quite easily lost that series 3-2, and then lost the ODI series 3-0, where it could have actually won the series 2-1. And so it's been an odd tour because when you've got clean sweeps of series, you'd expect the same team to be doing the clean sweeping. But clearly that isn't the case. So India swept the T20 series clean, whereas New Zealand have fought back brilliantly, shown a lot of character, and won the ODI series 3-0. So, Adam, tell us how they firstly bounced back from that 5-0. Did that hurt them?
Well, it did as New Zealand fans. I guess, as you mentioned, the T20 series was so close. I mean, there were there was 2 Super matches, which we won't go too much into. We couldn't obviously get over the line, and we just were unable to handle the pressure in those 2 matches. But the series could have gone either way. And it was a really interesting one-day series for me because both teams were really depleted on paper. When you actually look at the sides going back a year, they're completely different lineups, weren't they? And you think about the Indian side, no Rohit Sharma, who's basically a god of one-day cricket now, one of the all-time great players. Shikhar Dhawan, who's we all know is a fantastic opening batsman, and a few other additions in the Indian ODI lineup. Then you look at the New Zealand side as well. We didn't have Trent Boult, Lockie Ferguson, Matt Henry, Kane Williamson didn't play the first 2 matches. So you look at both sides, and it was an interesting series in that regard. Both sides weren't quite at full strength. To be honest, I thought India would win the ODI series 3-0 before it started, especially after the T20 series. But as you rightly point out, the one-day series could have even gone India's way as well. You think about that first match at Eden Park. Seddon Park. India got a great total on the board. Iyer made that fantastic 100, and at one stage, India got themselves back into the match before Mitchell Santner paid a little cameo at the end, and we got across the line. Eden Park was a little bit, similar. I guess the roles reversed this time, where India got themselves back into the match after being in some trouble, and Jadeja just played a blazing innings, which he can do, and that kind of innings brought back memories of the World Cup semi-final, where he nearly got India over the line, and then even in the third match as well, India got a good score on the board on a really good batting pitch. I thought New Zealand at one stage were under control. Then Ross Taylor got out, and it kind of opened the door up for India. And then again, DeGrom came in, played a blazing 50 off 20 odd balls, and really took the game away from India when they had an opportunity to get back in the match. So for me in this one-day series was that New Zealand took those crucial opportunities where India were unable to. And I think over the series, that was the difference between the teams. When you contrast that with the T20 series, India were able to win those crucial moments, especially those two super over matches.
Yeah, fantastic comeback from the New Zealand team, obviously, to win those 3 games on the trot. And, of course, they won 2 games chasing over 300. So has there been a bit of a mindset shift, Adam, from the World Cup? Because they were really good at putting a score on the board and defending it, which is what they did in the second ODI game, where they defended 273. But they also did chase down 2 big totals at 300 plus. So any views on that?
Yeah, it's quite a funny World Cup in many ways for New Zealand, because I felt like during the World Cup we didn't really get great batting conditions to bat on. When you actually look at all the highest scorers in the competition, there are no New Zealanders basically apart from Kane Williamson that feature in that list. And we didn't really get a lot of big totals in the World Cup, apart from that Sri Lankan match where we were able to bundle Sri Lanka out and chase down the total pretty quickly. When you think about it, it was more of our bowlers that made the impact during the World Cup. Matt Henry and Trent Boult and Lockie Ferguson all had really good World Cups. So I think basically just being back in home conditions, the batting pitch at Seddon Park was a great pitch to bat on. At night at Seddon Park, the ball can come on a little bit, so it can be easier to bat under lights. I think Bay Oval was the same as well. I think New Zealand's become kind of comfortable with chasing. And you think of someone like Ross Taylor, who's now one of the best middle order batsmen in one-day cricket. I think he's one of those guys that just knows how to manage a one-day innings right through to the end, and he just knows his game, and he doesn't get flustered. Along with Kane Williamson in that middle order, even though Kane only played the third match, you've got 2 guys that are just so good at controlling that middle stages. So I think that's really the strength of the New Zealand side. So in this series, the pitches were very good to bat on. It's been really dry in New Zealand over the last month or so. There's been a bit of a drought. Temperatures have been, upwards of, late 20s, early 30s across the country. So I think just the batting conditions, I think the Indian bowling lineup, wouldn't say it was a weak bowling lineup, but you did play a couple of guys that were on the fringe in that lineup. I thought Bumrah's lack of impact was a real surprise to me. I thought he would have bounced back a lot stronger after the series against Australia. Obviously, Thakura played. You didn't play Kuldeep and Chahal together in the series, which was interesting. And I think that's where someone like Hardik Pandya is such a vital member to this Indian side. So if he bats at number 7, it means he can kind of play those 2 guys and then play Shami and also play Bumrah. So for me, that was the big feature from the one-day series this year compared to the series last year. And I think that's possibly why you guys have got Jadeja as your second spinner, because he can bat at number 7. Having the 2 spinners and going on with 3 seamers, it just gives your tail a little bit of weakness. Whereas when you've got Pandya, and then not only does he offer the variation with the ball with his seam-up deliveries and his slower balls, but also bats at number 7. So for me, that was the kind of key difference this time around from last year. Obviously, Rohit Sharma was in fantastic form last year, and he's always going to be a big absence whenever he's not playing. And I guess looking across also the Indian middle order as well, from your perspective, Shreyas Iyer had a fantastic series, and you guys have been looking for a quality number 4 for a little while now. So I think you guys have definitely found one there.
Absolutely, and we've talked a lot about the middle order troubles that we've had. Obviously, KL Rahul's come good in the middle order as well, so that's helped a little bit. But he brought up a very interesting point, and we've had quite a lot of debate about that on the podcast. It's the Kuldeep and Chahal point. Now, as someone who supports another team, what is your view on India not playing those two attacking wrist spinners? Was it the size of the grounds that they were worried about, or was it lack of batting depth on batting-friendly pitches? Because what it takes away is Jadeja is, of course, a very good player and he does what he's being asked to do, but it takes away that attacking wrist spin option, right? And it replaces it with a more defensive kind of finger spinning option with a little bit of batting ability. So as someone who supports another team, I'd be interested in getting your view on wrist spinners, which we lovingly call kulcha.
Look, a year ago, I actually mentioned on Twitter that I thought they were the best spin bowling duo in the history of one-day cricket. Now, Kuldeep's form has kind of dipped off since the World Cup. You look at his figures, they haven't been quite as good. In saying that, you're right, you take away Kuldeep and Chahal, if you only play one of them, you do lose a lot of attacking threat, especially in those middle stages. And I think you're looking at the series against New Zealand, one of the major advantages for us was the ability to not lose clumps of wickets in the middle stages and able to put on good partnerships. So Jadeja is a very economical bowler. He doesn't obviously offer that threat, but then you think of Jadeja's all-round quality. He's a very good fieldsman. He's one of the world's best fieldsmen at the moment. So he just offers something a little bit different. But in terms of the bowling side of it, look, I think if you guys have those two spin bowling threats in the middle stages, it just makes it a lot harder for middle order batsmen to get a hold of them. It also means that there's more wicket-taking options. And we all know in one-day cricket now, to keep the runs down, you've got to be always taking wickets. But I also think that's where Bumrah and Shami so vital for this Indian side as well. If they can get early breakthroughs, basically what that means is that you've got these two spinners coming on in the middle stages and new batsmen are always having to come out and try to force the pace whilst also trying to ensure that they don't lose wickets.
It's interesting. Also, we have another player that we have a lot of chat about, and that is Shardul Thakur. Now, what do you make of him? Because he does a little bit with the bat, he does a little bit with the ball. Not quite up there yet with all-rounder status that maybe someone like Jadeja, but what are your thoughts on someone like him?
To be honest, I thought he was a major disappointment in the series. He leaked a lot of runs, let the pressure off. I think the New Zealand batsmen really attacked him as well. They knew that Bumrah was always going to be the threat, so he was the one to go. Look, I can't see him holding a spot in the Indian side probably post this tour. To be honest, I think Hardik Pandya comes into the number 7 position. You go on with your two spinners. You go on with Shami and Bumrah. I think Bumrah will get back into form. But just from an outsider's perspective, I kind of feel like India were more focused on trying to blood players for the upcoming T20 World Cup instead of blooding for any ODI tournaments going forward. I mean, the World Cup is in 4 years' time, or 3 years now. And so for me, sure, they were focusing on the series, but for me, they seem like they were focusing more on the future. You've blooded a few guys in the setup now that will get some experience under their belt, and come 2023 World Cup, we'll have a number of one-day matches under their belts.
Adam, it's always great to speak to you because it's almost like you follow the Indian cricket team as passionately as we do in some ways. So that's really good. Let's talk a little bit about the New Zealand side because they, as you said, really suffered from illness and injury during that second ODI. Obviously, Kane Williamson only came back in the third game. The assistant fielding coach was out to field for them at some stage, which was pretty amazing, Luke Ronke. So who were the kind of key performers from your perspective during the ODI series, and who do you think is going to be a long-term prospect? Because obviously the first choice seamers weren't available, the ones that reduced India to 5 for 3 in that famous or infamous semi-final, depending on which way you look at it from.
It was a very interesting one-day series in terms of performers. As I mentioned earlier, New Zealand were without their full-strength attack. I thought Kyle Jamieson performed extremely well for his debut one-day series. Like, he's obviously a big, tall guy that gets a lot of bounce. He's been a fine performer in our domestic cricket over the last few years in all formats. He's a guy that can hit a long ball. I think he showed in that second ODI international that he's really composed. He can handle the bat. I thought Hamish Bennett came back well after a spell of wilderness from the Black Caps setup. We remember a spell that he bowled to Virat Kohli in 2014 where he eventually got his wicket. And and he really made his name in that series. But he's been out of favour for the last few years. He's been one of our best domestic players. In terms of his international record, before the series, it was very good. He's struggled with injuries over the last 5 or 6 years, so it's been great to see him back in the international side. I think Henry Nicholls had a really good series. New Zealand's been really looking for an opening partner for Martin Guptill. We've tried Colin Munro over the last couple of years. That hasn't quite worked. But Henry Nicholls' ability to just be able to settle himself, get himself in, nudge the ball around, and also complement Martin Guptill, for me, was a feature. And you think about the series, the opening partnerships from New Zealand really gave us a really good platform to build on. And you look at, in particular, at Mount Maunganui when Martin Guptill and Henry Nicholls put on a great partnership and at one stage really took the game away from India.
Yes, so there you have it, guys. I mean, it was a great series for New Zealand, 3-0, some new performance coming out with both teams, actually. And one of the pluses for the Indian team was, of course, KL Rahul coming good at number 5 for us. So a good series, slightly, again, maybe a little bit inconsequential in the year where you've got a T20 World Cup, and as Adam said, India and New Zealand probably were both looking to test some players for that World Cup as well. So guys, that's the wrap on the ODI series, and we'll take a short break and we will be back with a preview of the Test series and the Test squad, so don't go anywhere.
We would like to thank HDFC Life Insurance for supporting this show. HDFC Life Insurance has created an online video series called Behind the Journey with some of the most interesting people from the creative and entertainment industry. It explores the stories that are behind the glitz and glamour of the spotlight and screaming fans. Let's listen to a snippet from the episode featuring singer Jasleen Royal.
Music थोड़ी expensive hobby होती है, and for middle class parents to understand that and support you can be a little difficult. So I went to my music teacher and he said, why don't you teach my batch? And I started taking his batches. So the goal was to earn around 40,000 क्योंकि मुझे एक keyboard लेना था अपने लिए. I saved money every penny I made and I got that keyboard.
Saving money is a key component to take care of your dreams and your finances. You can watch all episodes of Behind the Journey on the HDFC Life Insurance YouTube channel. That's at youtube.com/HDFC Life. Take control of your personal goals with HDFC Life Insurance's financial solutions. Plan now with HDFC Life Insurance.
Terms and conditions apply. HDFC Life Insurance Company Limited, IRDAI registration number 101.
Welcome back from that break, and we're still talking to Adam Bell from the Cricketeers NZ podcast. Adam, the New Zealand squad has been announced today, and there's no place for Mitchell Santner. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Look, to be honest, he had a poor series against Australia, and I think he's really copped it for that. We all know Australia is a very difficult place for spinners to bowl well in. We've seen some great spinners from various countries go to Australia, be hammered all around the park. I remember a few years ago, Yasir Shah was rated one of the best bowlers in the world, and he really struggled over there in Australia. I think Mitchell Santner's really paid the price for that series. We remember that he got 100 against England before Christmas. His overall test stats aren't great at the moment, averaging 44 with the ball, in the mid-20s with the bat. I think the selectors have really gone in for a specialist spinner. They've selected Ajaz Patel, who's only played 2 home test matches. He's only played 7 matches in total. A lot of his success has come over in the subcontinent, especially in the tours to the UAE and also in Sri Lanka last year. He's averaging, I think, 32 with the ball. He's been a fine domestic performer over the last few years, tops the wicket-taking tally in our Plunket Shield for a couple of seasons on a few different occasions. So, look, he's a guy that I think really deserves his spot. It's interesting that New Zealand selectors have gone away from having a number 8 spinning option who is proficient with the bat. What this will mean is that Tim Southee will bat at number 8, and he is more than capable of holding that position. I'm sure at some stage Tim Southee will threaten to get a Test 100. He's already got a first-class 100. He's a guy that's always shown some promise with the bat. Remember his debut against England where he hit the ball all over the place. I think it was 77 off 40 balls, I think, from memory. So it'll give him more opportunities to get some runs as well. So I think it was a no-brainer that Mitchell Santner was dropped. However, it is a 2-match test series. The first match will be played at the Basin Reserve generally basin reserve conditions seam bowlers, so spinners don't really come into their own there, and possibly the selectors might look at an all-seam attack, but I think you do need to have a spinner in your lineup just to add a little bit of variation.
Interesting. There's a couple of points that come out of it, Adam. The first one is, why is this just a 2-test series? The two big nations playing excellent cricket against each other. It's hard, competitive cricket that everybody enjoys. Why is it only going to be two test matches? I mean, is there a particular reason? Is there a scheduling issue, or is it just the BCCI saying we need to be back in time for the IPL?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I know New Zealand plays Australia on the 13th of March, which is 3 weeks away. So I'm not sure. To be honest, I would have loved to have seen a 3-match test series. I mean, 2-match test series just seem ridiculous, don't they? I mean, I'm not saying they're a waste of time, but like if it goes if it ends up being a 1-all series result, at the end of it, all of us fans will be upset that there's not that third and final deciding match. I just think the ICC needs to do something about this minimum 3-match test series. I get there's lots of scheduling issues, trying to schedule T20 matches and also one-day matches as well. But I personally think 3 one-day matches, 3 T20 matches, and 3 test matches, that'd be the ideal tour.
Fantastic, and I'd absolutely agree with that. I think you're just about settling in for the ride when you rudely interrupted in a 2-test series. But the other point that I wanted to raise with you was you mentioned that it was really hot there and it was there was a bit of a dry spell going on there. Wouldn't that assist spinners? Because New Zealand have only picked 1 spinner in their squad. So is that, and as you said, that's Ajaz Patel, and is that an indication as to what the kind of wickets they're going to have for the test series? Because there has been some chatter of late about test wickets in New Zealand being dead and not providing results by the end of the 5 days. So is this an indication, A, that they're going to be seaming wickets, or B, that there will be batting tracks where the bowlers will just encounter a little bit of a graveyard?
Interesting, thoughts there, because you think about the Basin Reserve, and historically the Basin Reserve has offered a lot of seam movement, especially early on in the Test match. And we also think about the Basin Reserve when New Zealand played Sri Lanka, a couple of seasons ago, where Tom Latham got that huge double century, and then in reply Sri Lanka put on a great partnership. I think it was Matthews ended up being 150 odd not out, and then the rain came and the match was a draw. Traditionally, the wickets in New Zealand are drier after Christmas. I mean, January, February are some of our driest months. A lot of spinners tend to do well January, February, March in domestic cricket. In particular, Ish Sodhi and Ajaz Patel have performed well in the Plunket Shield in those months. A lot of their wickets do tend to come in the back half of the season. And if you actually compare that, for example, with the start of the season in our domestic cricket, a lot of seam bowlers tend to pick up a lot of wickets. It's actually been a really interesting summer, because normally it's a lot wetter around October, November months. But this season, we had a bit of a heat wave at the start of the year. So the pitch that was used at Bay Oval against England, that was a really dry track, a real dry, dead track. Now, the pitch at the Basin Reserve, it's going to be interesting. Look, I've heard a few reports that it looks really green, which suggests it will suit the seam bowlers. I think every team needs to play a spinner. I mean, even if the spinner is used sparingly, I think New Zealand can work around that by having the CDG bowling as your holding role bowler. And then obviously you've got the 3 other seam bowlers, Wagner, Bolt and Selby. If the pitch was to crack up, or there are some deep footmarks, that's where someone like Ajaz Patel can come on the 15 and hopefully work his magic.
Yeah, I think the Indians have already started identifying Wagner as the danger man with his short ball tactics. I think he got Steve Smith out 4 times in the Australian tour. So, I think Shubman Gill, one of the Indian youngsters, has identified Wagner as one of the main threats. Of course, Bolt and Saudi class bowlers with seam and swing movement, particularly in their home conditions as well. So it looks like a solid New Zealand attack, of course, as usual. But Adam, I wanted to get your thoughts on some of the Indian players as well. One of the big debates we've been having on the Indian side is the opening combination now with the injury to Rohit Sharma, ruling him out of the Test series and the ODI series. That's left one slot up for grabs at the top of the Indian order. Mayank Agarwal, who made his debut in the Boxing Day Test in 2018, I think takes one of those slots. He averages 67 in the Test game, consistent performer at the first-class level. But the two contenders for the other slot have been Prithvi Shaw, who made a Test 100 on debut. He's been compared to Sachin and Sehwag right from he's a youngster, 19 years of age. He's just a phenomenon, and he's been around for a little while. He came to prominence through a schoolboy innings of 546 not out, which was absolutely incredible. And the other boy in contention is his teammate and vice-captain in the Under-19 World Cup that Prithvi Shaw captained India to victory at. And that's Shubman Gill, who's been in stellar form for India. He's got double 100, he's got ton. He's been batting really well for India A against New Zealand A. So any thoughts on who you would play if you were an Indian coach or Indian captain in the first Test match? Noting that Prithvi Shaw has played 2 Test matches and then was ruled out of the Australian tour due to injury, etc., whereas Shubman Gill hasn't actually made his Test debut as yet.
Interesting call. One thing I will say is you guys are lucky to have 2 guys that are absolutely phenomenally talented. I mean, like both these 2 guys have got the potential to be world-class batsmen for India in the future. I would go Shubman Gill, only because he performed well against New Zealand A. He knows the conditions well. He toured here with India A last year as well. He's got a fantastic technique. He's got a great head on his shoulders. He looks composed. He's got a great domestic record. I would go Shubman Gill. I could see why they would go Shaw as well. I was speaking with my colleague Rick, actually, who watched New Zealand A versus India A at Seddon Park in Hamilton, and he said Shaw tried to lap one of the fast bowlers on a few different occasions. So I think that's a bit of an indication that maybe Shaw's head is not quite in the game at the moment to play in the longer form. He seems like a very dynamic batsman, loves playing his shots, where Shubman Gill is a little bit more measured. He's a bit more of a Rahul Dravid kind of demeanour about him. So I'd probably lean towards Shubman Gill. I know Shubman Gill's best batting position is probably number 3, but I think from all reports that Shubman Gill would like the opportunity to open the batting, and I'm sure he'd do a great job.
Yes, he's actually come out and said that he wouldn't mind opening the batting, but there's another left field kind of choice for India to fit Gill into the squad and into the 11 by batting him at maybe number 6 and moving Hanuma Vihari up to open the batting, who's done that. He's done that actually with limited success, I'd say, on the Australian tour. I think he had scores of 13 and 8. But would you be in favour, and Hanuma Vihari's been in good form at number 6. He got 100 in the warm-up game. He's got hundreds in the West Indies tour where he last played. He didn't get much of an opportunity in the home season because we played 2 spinners and 3 quicks. But would you be in favour of actually moving Vihari, being successful at number 6, up to the top of the order to accommodate an untested and untried youngster?
Well, that's a massive call, because Vihari himself is pretty inexperienced in the Test arena as well. Even though you've said he's had a bit of success there before. So he's only making his way in Test match cricket. He's obviously got a great Test match record to date. It's going to be a really interesting call. I'll probably get another left field call. What about someone like Ajinkya Rahane, who's really good against the moving ball, and he's shown great qualities playing overseas?
So he'd bat at he could bat at open the batting, you're saying, or there could be another option of moving Pujara up. But I guess the question that this all boils down to is: would you disturb a lineup that's fairly settled in where it bats, and to accommodate a player that isn't actually tried or tested, particularly since Prithvi Shaw has opened the batting his whole life, pretty much. So he's always opened the batting, so it's a like-for-like replacement in some ways. Rohit hasn't actually opened the batting all his life, but Shaw has been an opener.
It is interesting, because if you did move one of those guys up the order, you do kind of change the rest of the dynamics of the order. So you're probably right. I mean, Shaw would be a great option. You know, you think about the way he plays, he might be the kind of guy that could unsettle the guys like Southey and Bolt. You know, he plays in that kind of say-wag, flamboyant kind of fashion, doesn't he? So, you know, if he was to get a few deliveries off the middle of the bat, then he's kind of suddenly starts to disrupt Bolt's and Southey's length. So, you know, he could be a definite option, I think. I think you're right on there. I mean, obviously, you know, I kind of favoured Shub and Gill for different reasons, but I think both those guys are so talented that they both do a great job if selected.
Fantastic. So I think Jadeja might be playing, because we haven't got Pand here, so I think Jadeja will be the spinner. Do you think India are going to be playing two spinners? Maybe Ashwin, who very much seems to be India's second spinner overseas, funnily enough. Do you think India are going to go with two spinners and three seamers? Or what kind of combination would you recommend India go with? Because obviously that affects whether Vihari plays at six, because if we don't play six batsmen, he doesn't make the cut. And then I'm going to come to the wicket-keeper question, because we're sometimes called the Rishabh Pant show, so we can't go by without actually
I love that guy. I love him too.
Boy.
I love him too. And that just shows you the amount of great talent that you guys have got, that you've got someone like Pant who's at the moment is sitting on the bench. Interesting dynamics with your bowling lineup. Again, you guys at the moment have so much riches. It's very difficult to come up with a definitive bowling lineup. Obviously, you know, Kumar's not over on this tour, and you know, to be honest, I think he'd be the one bowler that would relish our conditions. I mean, Shami's got a great record at home and away. I think he's one of the world's most underrated bowlers. You know, Bumrah is still coming back from injury. You know, he destroyed the West Indies overseas. I'm really fascinated to see how he goes in this Test series. In terms of the spin option, look, to be honest, I think it's a really close call between Jadeja and Ashwin. I'd actually go Ashwin. I don't think you lose much with the bat with Ashwin. You know, he's got a proven Test match record. He's got a Test century against the Black Caps before. I think the thing that Ashwin does have is that you think that he can turn the ball both ways. And I think that's a vital thing against the New Zealand batsman. You've got a guy that obviously turns the ball into the right-handed batsman, but he also has that deucer as well. That's why I would go with Ashwin over Jadeja. But again, you don't really lose too much. It depends on what kind of role they want the spinner to play. If it's just to keep the runs down and give the quicks a bit of a rest, I mean, Jadeja could do that job as well. So I think you guys are in a position where it's so close to call. I guess Jadeja does have the advantage in being that he's actually been playing recently as well. But then you've got to think that India's last Test series was against South Africa in India, which are completely different conditions to what they are here. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting call come game day.
And would you go for Rishabh Pant or would you go for Ridhiman Saha, who's obviously the better keeper, hasn't had that much opportunity with the bat, but is competent, but more in the mould of a keeper batsman rather than a batsman keeper, which is what I think Pant is.
This is another question as well. Like, when you think about the conditions in India, they're a lot different to the conditions in New Zealand. So, obviously, in India, the ball's turning a lot more. So, you guys will play two spinners over there. So, you need a really proficient wicket keeper, don't you? The ball's keeping low, it's turning, it's doing all sorts. So I think you can get away with probably having a less proficient wicket keeper in New Zealand conditions, especially if you play basically just a seam bowling lineup and the ball's not going to turn as much. So in that respect, I think someone like Pant could definitely slot in as the wicket keeper. And, you know, we know he's a dynamic batsman. You know, we saw him against Australia, and Australia ripped them apart. And I guess it depends on what they want as well. Look, I think if India were 3 or 4 down and you've got a guy like Pant sitting in the shed, then you've got that extra batting option down the order as well, who can really take a game away from you, a la kind of like the Adam Gilchrist style. But then you look at the makeup of the Indian batting lineup. Do you need two really flamboyant players in that lineup, i.e. Shaw and Pant as well? There's so many dominoes in your lineup in terms of who gets selected. One selection here and there can just change the dynamics of that team. And that's why I think the Indian side at the moment is so fascinating, because you've got so many great individual players, but it's trying to get that cohesive unit and get a kind of a strategy and a game plan using them all is the interesting thing.
Absolutely. And as you said, we've got the Ashwin Jadeja question, we've got the Gill Shaw question, we've got the Pant or Saha question, and we've also got, as you say, with the pace attack, we've got a slight question around who the third seamer is going to be, right? Because Umesh Yadav is one of the options, and he's been a performer for India at home. He's not got such a great away record, but Navdeep Saini, who you saw in the ODI series, a guy with a bit of pace. He was in the T20 series. He's got a little bit of pace. He's got a little bit about him. That boy, he scored 45 with the bat as well in the second ODI. So you've obviously seen them both. Who would you go for between those two? Because Ishant has got an ankle injury that he's recovered from, and he's flying out, but he's likely to miss the first test.
I think in this first test, I think you go with experience. I really do, especially because Bumrah at the moment looks a little bit underdone. I think just having that extra experience alongside Bumrah and Shami just gives that Indian bowling lineup just a touch more solidity. I think possibly in Christchurch, then you could go on with Saini down there. I guess it depends on the pitch as well. If it is a bit green, then you could go in with that extra seam bowler as well. So I think that will be an interesting call in itself. From what I saw in the one-day matches, like the Saini looks a fantastic prospect. He's only a young guy, as you said. He bowls with sheer pace. Seems like you guys are just producing a lot of quality fast bowlers at the moment. All across the park, you guys have got depth, don't you? I mentioned Kumar, who again is a class bowler and who's sitting on the sidelines in India at the moment, and Ishant Sharma, who's a much improved bowler over the last couple of years. He was much maligned for a lot of his career, wasn't he? But in the last couple of years in particular, he's really performed under Kohli's leadership. So, I think again, you guys are in a position where you can make those tough calls. I think you don't really lose a lot, but I think for this very first test, I'd go with the experienced campaigner.
Yeah, interesting. As you say, if the wicket is dry, you might actually play Ashwin and Jadeja, and the problem actually goes away of the third seamer, who that's going to be. So it's a problem of plenty. It's a problem that's not a bad one to have. Indian selection, however, has been unpredictable over the last few years. I mean, it's you think you've got a settled lineup and you know who's going to play the next test match, but I think there was a spell of 20-odd test matches where we made a change, at least one change, to our playing 11. So, yeah, we'll wait and watch, and I guess your guess is as good as ours. But, Adam, let's talk a little bit about the New Zealand 11 that you'd like to see out on the park. Obviously, Kane Williamson is the captain. He's back, he's recovered, and he's a world-class player, just a fantastic guy. We spoke to Craig McMillan a couple of episodes ago, and he was talking about how Kane Williamson is just this amazing presence in the dressing room. So that was fantastic. Who would your openers be, though? Because you've had some trouble out there. Jeet Rawal isn't in the squad. So are you going to go with the same guys who opened in the Australian tour?
I don't think we really have much choice. Tom Blundell, who scored that 100 in the Boxing Day test, he'll slot in one of the opening positions. And it's quite funny with Tom Blundell, he'd never opened in a first-class match before that test match against Australia, so he was, let's be honest, it's not the easiest assignment being forced to open the batting against that great Australian bowling lineup away from home. So it was a great 100 by him. I didn't have such a great time in Sydney, but I think he'll slot into the opening position. He'll be playing at home at the Basin Reserve, so I think he'll love that opportunity to perform in front of his home fans. Tom Latham as well. He's a world-class opening batsman. Kane Williamson, Ross Taylor, Henry Nichols will be in there. BJ Watling at number 6, or Colin de Gromholm, depending on what way they sort the order out. I think Colin de Gromholm is a key man for us. He had a very good series with the ball in Australia and got some really key wickets at times. His batting wasn't so good, but I'm expecting him to bounce back in the series. He had a very good third one-day international at the Mount. He's become a really key performer for us over the last couple of years. Bit of a philander with the ball, not quite as good. I'm not going to say he's quite philander, but he kind of does that role, kind of can hit the seam, and if there's anything in the deck, he can get anything out of it. He also plays the role as the holding bowler as well. So, if the pitch does have some juice in it, he becomes an attacking threat as well. He's just a bit of a silent assassin in New Zealand cricket at the moment. I think Southey comes in at number 8. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's time that Tim Southey shows some responsibility with the bat. He's got enough talent in the bat to make a Test century. He's only 31 years of age, so I think he's got plenty of time to hopefully grab one at some stage. Number 9, looking at Neil Wagner. Number 10, I'd go with Ajaz Patel. I always believe that you need some variation because you don't know what the pitch could do on the 4th and 5th day. It could crack up, or even spinners can get a little bit of bite. Ajaz Patel turns the ball away from the bat. You guys have got a whole host of right-handed batsmen, so I think that he should be a shoo-in. He's only played 2 tests at home, so I'd love to see him given an opportunity as well, and then you can kind of rotate the quicks around him and also Colin de Gromholm. Number 11, probably the greatest number 11 batsman of all time, Trent Boult. You've got to leave him there. So that would be the 11. There might be a temptation to maybe play Daryl Mitchell ahead of Ajaz Patel and go on with an all-seam attack. That would really strengthen the batting. Or alternatively, someone like Kyle Jamieson as well, who's a guy who's been great for us, great for us in the recent one-day series. Got a very good first-class record. He can bat as well, so he would also strengthen the batting as well if he was to come in. So, and he wouldn't let the team down. So, I think that I think personally I'd go with the spinner. I always think a spinner is necessary, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Black Caps roll out an all-seam attack, especially if the pitch is green at the Basin Reserve. And at the moment, the weather isn't looking too good from the weather reports I've seen this morning. It looks like it could be a bit of a rain-affected test match, which means the spinner may not come into play.
Yeah, that is a bit unfortunate, isn't it, if weather does come in. Adam, now I'm going to put you on the spot. This is the bit where we do our predictions. So let's start with the top run scorer for the series. And, of course, you've got some fantastic batsmen playing. You've got Kane Williamson, Ross Taylor, Che Pujara. You've got Virat Kohli, of course, in the mix as well. So let's go with your prediction for the top run scorer over the Test series of 2 matches.
Right. I'm gonna put a left field one out. I'm going to say Ajinkya Rahane. There you go.
And is that based on his record in other countries where the ball seems around a little bit?
It is. Look, I can see him being that guy that really rescues India if you guys do lose a few early wickets. I've always been a bit of a fan of Ajinkya Rahane as well. He's always performed in overseas conditions. He's a bit of an unlucky player in some respects. He could have easily played a few more one-day games. I know his strike rate isn't so flash in one-day cricket, but I've always respected the way he plays. A little bit like Rahul Dravid in the fact that he plays well overseas. So I think he might be in for a really good series. He got 100 in the tour match as well, so he's in good form.
And let's go with the top run scorer from the New Zealand side. Who are you tipping to score the runs?
I'm going to say Ross Taylor. So he plays his 100th Test matches Friday.
Oh,
so,
wow. Wow. Congratulations to Mr. Taylor. Wow. It's been a long time. He's the top run scorer for New Zealand across their history as well. So congratulations to Ross Taylor. Wow. So there you have the top run scorers. Who are the top wicket takers going to be from the Indian side and the New Zealand side as well?
All right. So from India, I'm going to say Shami.
That's a good shout. Good shout.
Yep. I'm going to say Shami. Or Shami. And from New Zealand, I don't think Trent Boult will be quite firing because I think he's coming back from injury. So I'll say Tim Southey.
Okay.
I think he'll relish being back in New Zealand conditions. He had a decent first test against Australia at Perth. Didn't have such a great test at the MCG. Was dropped for the final test match. So I think he'll come back firing Tim Southey. He's been a fine test performer for us over the last couple of years. So, I think Tim Southey, especially if the ball's moving around.
Interesting. And what's the final scoreline going to be? So that will really put you on the spot.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm going to have to be very careful here, aren't I? I think that this first test might end up being a draw, basically due to inclement weather. So looking at the long-range forecast, it looks like 3 of those days could be rain-affected. So I think it could be a draw. However, you never know with modern-day Test cricket. I mean, they're games that are over in 3 days, especially if the pitch has got a bit of juice in it. I think the second test will be interesting. Sometimes at Hagley Oval, the pitch can be very flat and good to bat on. I think that would suit the Indian side as much as our side as well. Guys, Kohli, Pujara, Rahane guys that can bat for long periods of time, and especially if the pitch is a little bit drier, then the spinners come into play, and we know that you guys have got the superior spinners. I'm gonna say us 1-0, but I think that second and final test could go either way. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 0-0 series, to be honest.
Oh wow. Two drawn test matches. I mean, that's going to be an absolute rarity. Well, at least if one. We haven't had 0-0 for a long time. But let me give you my predictions as well for the top run scorers. I'm going with Kane Williamson for New Zealand. I'm going with Mayank Agarwal for India because he opens the batting, and he's made some technical adjustments apparently of late, which hopefully should. He loves batting. That guy. He's been out of form previously, and he really relishes being in form and making it count. So I'm backing Mayank to get some big runs in this series. Opens the batting, so he needs to get through the first hour. But if he gets through that, I'm confident he'll score a lot of runs. Wickets, I am backing Bumrah to get back into the red ball swing of things. I mean, he was unplayable in the West Indies. He's come back with some good form in the warm-up game as well. For New Zealand, I like the look of Trent Boult generally. I always do, because he swings it back into the right-hander. And as you say, India do have a lot of right-handers. Basically, things like what he did to Virat Kohli in that semi-final, just take it away from him, and then bring one back in. And umpire's call on leg stump is what's going to happen. It's... So Trent Boult for me, top wicket taker, and I am going with 1-0 to India as well. So we will see how that turns out. Obviously, if there are two games, I think the shorter game is being the rain-affected game. It'll probably be a wicket which has got a bit of green on it to try and force a result. So I think in that case, that's kind of a little bit of a lottery, because whoever bats first is in a little bit of trouble, I think, in those circumstances. But if the first one is drawn, I'm backing our boys to take it where the ball spins a little bit and holds up in the ground. Okay, so I think that is a wrap on this week's show. Adam, it's been a pleasure having you on the show as always. Thank you so much for making the time. I know it's been a busy weekend for you, but we always appreciate speaking to fans and podcasters from all around the world. So thanks once again for making the time. And if you want to let our listeners know where they can find your podcast and your website, now's the time.
Absolutely. So I'm under Cricketeers NZ on Twitter. I know we follow each other on Twitter. I have the odd great cricket chat on there, which is always nice. And also on Facebook under Cricketeers NZ as well. And we're also available on all major platforms, Spotify, just under the Cricketeers.
Fantastic, Adam. And we hope to have you back on the show very soon. And of course, the World T20 is coming up. So we'll be looking to do a preview with about the New Zealand squad then. So hope to speak to you later in the year as well. But best of luck with everything. You're running a fantastic podcast, very passionate New Zealand fan. So it's really great to see that, and hope to speak to you soon.
Fantastic, mate. Thanks, DJ, for the opportunity to have a chat on your podcast. I look forward to listening to the episode, mate. And look forward to some great cricket chats over the next year. As you said, this rivalry between us and India, it's growing, and it's great to see. And I always love having a chat about cricket.
Looking forward to it, Adam. Speak soon.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
There you have it, guys. A really nice chat with Adam Bell of the Cricketeers podcast. They're based out in New Zealand, and we've had them on previously. Really nice and knowledgeable guys. Guys, we've also announced on Twitter an opportunity for our listeners to get involved with the Edges and Sledges Cricket podcast during the IPL this year. As you know, if you've been listening to our podcast regularly, we've been speaking to various fans of the teams over the course of the IPL. And this year, we thought it would be quite fun to get you guys involved. So the way to get involved with it is, there are details on Twitter, but please send us a voice note, just a recording of you telling us a little bit about yourselves, a little bit about your team, and we'll try and work out a way to get you all involved with the podcast. I know there's a lot of passion about the IPL. The timeline's already full
of lots of banter between the team fans. So it's really great to see that all kicking off so quickly. But guys, record the voice note, send it into contact@onetiponehand.com, and you may find yourself on this very podcast. So guys, please do that, and we look forward to receiving all those voice notes. We've actually got quite a few. We've got at least one fan from each team that's already written in. So this is definitely going ahead, but we're going to try and find a way to get more of you involved, right? So please do that. As always, we're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at OneTipOneHand. We're at contact@onetiponehand.com for you to send in your voice notes. And yes, please give us your reviews. We've got some fantastic reviews of late. It's really nice to hear you guys feeding back. Leave us a review on iTunes. It helps the podcast grow. And tell your friends about us. I mean, especially for the IPL, even though you might not support a particular team, others might. So tell your other friends to write into us as well, and maybe we'll get a new listener and you'll get to banter with them on the podcast itself. So guys, that's a wrap on this week's show. We will be back next week, and hopefully we'll have a little something special about the Women's World T20 that's going to kick off soon. So we will be back next week, and see you then.
I hope you enjoyed that show. We'd like to thank our sponsors this week, HDFC Life and Paytm Money. If you have a brand and you think that podcasting would work well for you and your brand, then please do get in touch with you. We are always looking for new brands to bring on board. And let me tell you a couple of things that you should check out this week. On IVM Likes is Abbas's last episode as an IVM staffer. Join him, Ritika, and Antariksh as they talk about movies which have multiple plot lines that come together in the end. On Football Tripal, Karthik, Gaurav, and Simram give their predictions for this year's round of 16 of the Champions League. On our Kannada podcast, Thale Harate, space entrepreneur Narayan Prasad joins Pawan and Ganesh to shed light on SpaceX, to space tourism and satellite warfare. On Geek Fruit, Tejas, Dinkar, and Jishnu talk about the announcement of the new Mortal Kombat animated movie. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet is joined by the man who manages Bhuvan Bam, Rohit Raj, and the head of TVF Play at The Viral Fever, Vinay Pillai, to talk about the growth of the online digital space. Thanks and keep listening.
Do you wish you were smarter? Well, so do we. But the next best thing?
We could make you sound smarter.
And to help you with this endeavor, we are Simplified, a podcast that attempts to break down the complex world around you with a little knowledge, a lot of poor jokes, and a ton of random trivia.
Episodes out every Monday
On the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
See ya!